Late, perhaps too late, a warning is sounding across a troubled land. The tribal Sing Sing marks the start of one of Papua New Guinea's first major meetings on AIDS. The big men of health and government have come to confront an unprecedented crisis. "13 years after AIDS was first detected here, it has begun to spread like wildfire, killing as many women as men. For more than a decade, the authorities ignored the problem. Some hoped the isolation of their mountain and jungle villages would protect them from this global scourge. But suddenly, they are facing a catastrophe.
If we don't do things innovatively and proactively in the country, we will definitely have maybe much more problems than what's faced in Africa, I believe.
Even worse than Africa, potentially?
I would think so.
Hi, Tessie. How are you?
Tessie Soi has seen it coming for years. She's the social worker at Port Moresby Hospital and one of only a handful of qualified AIDS counsellors in the country. In a capital renowned for poverty and violence, AIDS is now the hospital's main cause of death.
Agatha, isn't it? You're right. Now how am I right? Okay.
Her patient Thomas will be one of the next to die.
He's turned, it's AIDS now. He's actually lost a lot of weight, as you can see. He's going down.
Thomas's wife Agatha knows she will eventually share his fate.
They just got married 6 months before he started getting sick.
Yes. Right. Did she know he had HIV?
No, she didn't, that we know. But, after she found out, she's been very supportive of him.
Both their families have shunned them since the diagnosis. The support from the state is almost nil. The hospital gives Thomas a place to sleep, but there is no money for the retroviral drugs that could keep him alive.
That's the support we can give him, but there's nothing in place with the government agencies, nothing at all.
But if you're overwhelmed in this early stage of the epidemic, what's going to happen in 5 years' time?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe what we're going to do is we're just going to go under,
But the social implications for this country could be even worse. Today, Tessie is burying her second patient in 2 days. Vincent was a 28-year-old lawyer and the mainstay of his entire extended family. His death may have condemned them to a life of endemic poverty. In this close-knit, village-based society, the loss of someone like Vincent is an agonising, devastating blow. Unlike Thomas and his wife Agatha, Vincent had the love and support of his family. But he kept the true cause of his illness a secret, telling them he was dying from tuberculosis.
I don't know whether everybody here knows what Vincent died of. Vincent is another young Papua New Guinean, been claimed by this dreaded disease, AIDS. And it's said that this type of disease, if we don't try and do something about it, will continue to claim our educated elite that we need for our country to keep on going.
The family takes the news calmly, a rare sign of tolerance in a society where AIDS is a cause of shame as well as fear.
We must make sure that we don't get it, but if someone else gets it, we must make sure that we love them and care for them, because if we do that, they will live longer. So I'd like to say God bless, Bamahuta, and goodbye, my friend.
One more death, one more funeral in an epidemic that may claim hundreds of thousands of lives. No one knows how many people are infected. Estimates range as high as 22,000 people, with up to 1 in 5 prostitutes testing positive. But it's the rate of increase that has doctors so alarmed. The number of reported cases has doubled in the past 18 months. In the mathematics of death, HIV appears to have reached the critical mass for a year-by-year explosion.
I would say in the general trends of the epidemic would be the same as in Africa, like maybe 70% in some population groups and so on.
The situation here is desperate but not hopeless. Papua New Guinea is belatedly trying to tackle the crisis. The next 12 months will be critical to halting an African-level epidemic. But while intentions are good, resources are scarce. For now, most of the fight against AIDS is in the hands of small groups of grassroots workers facing extraordinary odds. Rita Marahu is a latter-day missionary, spreading the gospel of good health and safe sex. Employed by the Seventh-day Adventist Church and funded by the Australian government, her team travels as far as it's possible to go.
One of the biggest difficulties is the road. When it's raining, it's not accessible.
It is the hardest country on earth to try to educate people about AIDS. There is no television outside the main towns and almost no radio. Communication must be face-to-face. It is painstakingly slow and unreliable, but there is no alternative. Even when she reaches villages, there is no certainty she can talk to them.
Oh, the women can't speak pidgin.
Every few kilometres there's an entirely different language. Even the lingua franca, pidgin, can fall on deaf ears, particularly among women. So you've got 800 languages in this country?
More than 800. The last I've heard was 869.
Right, so over the next hill there, they may not understand the language of the people in this valley. Bit of a problem for getting the message across.
It is a very big difficulty in educating the people about HIV/AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
One of the difficulties.
One of the many.
Yes.
Right. Another is a deep taboo against talking about sex. Rita perseveres regardless.
No, God, all right. One story na you harim. School mi flag give him long toka long rot binatan lo sikate mironol semwanem. Number 1 rot. Tapos man na Mary silib one time, one plab longo ligat binatan ba emi kisim sik. Number 2, mama igat binatan istap longem na emi karim pikinini and by give him the slap pikinini blongen binatan blo sick AIDS.
She'll have to hope the men translate it for the women later.
Most of the people we have spoken to in the villages have heard the words HIV and AIDS, do not know the difference between HIV and AIDS, and are very frightened about the disease itself.
To help get the message across, a troupe of travelling actors use comedy to present the things villagers don't like to talk about. A character called Uncle Condom shows the best way of protection against the disease known in pidgin as sick AIDS.
You can drink, you can make it number, make it possible, thing in condom. You must have syphilis gonorrhea. Video, all got marasin. Na AIDS no got marasin. Also na thing condom ha. So mo sila make it possible for round number truth. Thing condom, putting condom no bilum leo. Lo pagat taon sila karung mo about na issue condom ha.
Like all such programs, it's funded by Australia, part of a $16 million AIDS prevention program from the development agency AusAid. The aid program is partly altruism and partly self-interest. The call on Australia to help treat AIDS could eventually run into the hundreds of millions. This is racy stuff for a traditional conservative society. The village clearly relates to the portrayals of drunken one-night womanising and laughs at the message. There's no telling how long they'll remember it. But what you're not yet seeing in the villages is widespread cases of people with full-blown AIDS. That could still be years away. And until they do, most people probably won't take it seriously. By the time they do, it could be too late. Even in the cities, the message is barely getting through. This is Papua New Guinea's biggest port at Lae in the northern province of Morobe, one of the gateways of HIV infection. Friday is payday, and 26-year-old Michael Habu and his fellow stevedores are deciding how they'll spend their wages. As always, sex is high on the agenda.
Ikat sambla kain olman, o sambla, embo luglug lo pasin pamu, sambla embo luglug lo sem family wise ken lo sem go again laos sem naraploman em si money em like em sem by emas walk around having sexual intercourses one them will narapla.
Many come here to a disused airstrip near the centre of Lae. It's a sad and seedy venue for open-air prostitution. Mary left her home in the highlands after her husband decided to find a new wife. She survives by selling herself for less than $2.
Pilimasan bami flexing this stigma bami prenda na mi plus all house lo pain condom time all tak no at condom na mi plus pain this is something go no na bagay em fret talk mi that school blow you all merina em to sana mi plus ko school mi sim plus school na mi plus school na em seven bla la condom seven bla condom na mi plus in second.
Few people are interested in helping the prostitutes. Wilfred Peter is an exception. He's been running an Australian-funded program to train women like Mary to teach the others about safe sex. But the seed money for the program has almost run out. At best, it will continue in a scaled-down form. Wilfred fears the hard-won progress could be lost.
Building a relationship in an area like this is very difficult. It takes an awful lot of time. It takes a heart to really get out there and be with the people. And to lose, people we've had is another task to handle again.
Money is so short that Papua New Guinea has had to make a deadly choice. It's put all its AIDS budget into education, leaving nothing for treatment. And the most vulnerable of all are paying the price. About 10% of AIDS transmission is from mothers to unborn babies. Drugs can have a dramatic effect in stopping this, but there's just no funds to buy them. So every day, babies are needlessly contracting HIV.
Yes, it's very difficult when you don't have the resources to try and do everything. So those are the sort of dilemmas that we're faced with.
Some churches are trying to fill the gap. This is a deeply religious society. Rita Marahu sees her work as both a Christian duty and a social imperative.
I am worried because I have a daughter, and if I don't do something about it, she may be one of those who will be infected.
But for every Christian intent on saving lives, there are others with an eye on saving souls.
I don't believe in safe sex because safe sex is still sin. It is sex outside marriage. When young people are encouraged to live in sex through condom, then it becomes a habit. And you might
Pastor Elijah Jordan Som of the Revival Flames Ministry is part of the burgeoning Pentecostal church. He's at the forefront of a campaign to ban condom promotion. Today, he's taking his message to Port Moresby University.
Taking the strong principle of the Word of God to schools and to young people on the streets and telling them about the Word of God, which speaks against living in sex outside marriage. And I believe when we do that, we can prevent AIDS. Because condoms is just encouraging young people to continue to live in sex again. So what do you think?
On a Western campus, he'd be eaten alive. Here, no one disagrees.
Yeah, I think I do agree with you guys.
I think using of condom will never prevent AIDS.
Ever.
Because if God wants this thing to happen in its own time, then condoms or whatever we may use, it will never prevent AIDS.
It's a view that pervades much of the government. There is still no safe sex campaign on television or radio. Instead, the Port Moresby administration erected this warning: immoral sex kills.
They're going to actually drag people living with AIDS down even further, because they're going to say, well, I must have done something wrong, where really a lot of them actually are not into sex work, they're not into promiscuity, they're just the normal people who are trying to have a relationship. These mothers have got to get, hello, David, stop.
Tessie took me to see another of her patients who's been driven to rock bottom.
This is David. And
David is now in the terminal stage of AIDS. She came across him living alone without money or even food.
His family being supportive in any way?
We'll ask the ladies here. Has his family supported him?
No. No.
He's now being cared for by single mothers from a self-help group with endless goodwill, but no money either. Tessie has formed an AIDS charity called the Friends Foundation to try to raise enough funds to at least stop this. But she's still had to buy food from her own meagre wages.
Being that I believe that giving people with AIDS the support will tell others, look, don't be like me, you know.
Yeah.
I'm going through this and it's like hell, you know. Let's try not to, you know, spread the virus out to others.
Papua New Guinea is totally unprepared for what lies ahead. The village system has long made up for the shortfalls of government, but fear and ignorance of AIDS has robbed people of even that support. It will take an unprecedented national campaign to prevent a social calamity. If Papua New Guinea can't stop this epidemic, God help its people.